Hi, this is my review of The Lord of Tears, also known as The Owlman. This is an indie horror film. It has been out for several years now. I had heard about it every now and then, but never got to watch it because there were mixed opinions. Some people said that it was really awesome, some others said that it was a bit boring. I also got curious about it because they said it was a Lovecraftian horror sort of film. And although there are some Lovecraftian elements, I think there are some things that are different. I finally watched this movie because it is available here in YouTube. You can watch it legally. I'm going to put the link in the description below. The owner of the Owlman, I don't know if I think he is also the producer and the director. He set up the movie to be seen as a free film here in YouTube. So if this review makes you want to watch the movie, I recommend that you do so. But that is up to you. After all, I am going to tell you what I thought of the film. Maybe there are some things that you will simply not like, and maybe you will find it just like not suitable to your taste in horror. So let's start talking about some technical things. The acting. The acting, well, the female character, Eve, I think she's the best actress in the film. The main character, James, I think he has like just like some mixed reactions, or rather, I was not entirely convinced of his acting. There are some moments that I think he completely nails some scenes, particularly those scenes that have to do with sadness and a bit of madness. But besides that, when he's in his normal self, I get that he's supposed to be a somewhat lukewarm, average, perhaps very plain sort of guy. That is the character. But I think it is also possible to make those characters memorable, perhaps in their plainness, in the way that they are just so unremarkable. You still remember them because of that unremarkable trait or quality. But I think that James, the main character of the film, sometimes he feels just too dull. And not in a Silent Hill sort of way that is a dullness that is at the same time disturbing. I think he should have gone for that. That would have made the character more interesting. But like I said, the female character Eve, she's very skilled at communicating her flirtiness, her coyness. She has this sort of aura of mystery to her, of playfulness at the same time. And the other character in the film that doesn't appear too often, which is the best friend of James, I also think that he wasn't too good at certain moments. His performance was a bit hit or miss. There was this scene, and it's not a spoiler, this review is going to be spoiler free, but this scene where he is basically screaming, and the way that he screams, it's supposed to be like a scream like of horror or terror, or perhaps a certain madness. But I don't know if it's because of his mustache, but it looks like he's smiling while he's screaming, but it seems like a very like a yell or a scream where you are having fun. When you are having fun, because it's kind of like smiling, but he should have been more like like terrified, or like I said, with a lot of madness. So I think that in those moments where he's supposed to communicate this intensity of distress, desperation, perhaps he doesn't quite get there. So the acting is a bit mixed. It's average in general, I would say. When it comes to the sound is adequate. It's atmospheric for the most part, but there isn't like any memorable part of the score. Perhaps there is this part of a choreography, a dance choreography, when the female character Eve is flirting with James. Perhaps that's the most memorable part when it comes to sound, but besides that, it's just atmospheric and somewhat forgettable. Now, when it comes to the scenery, the locations, I think they are perfect. The areas in the wilderness, this sort of like swampy, foresty sort of area, it's just perfect. The trees look like those archetypical trees that you would see in the cover of a horror book or film. The mansion itself, where the main storyline happens, that is truly Lovecraftian. Although there is a certain section of the house that involves a big reveal in the plotline. I'm not going to spoil that, but I think it could have been handled way better. In a sort of, I don't want to spoil things. How would I say it? Just like if they added a bit more details in that particular section of the house, it would have been great. I also think that the furniture, the books, also fit the theme, the story. In fact, when I was watching this film with my two friends, I told them I bet, well, I think it would be a great idea. Sorry, I think it would be a great idea if some supernatural thing were to swing around this sort of furniture. That would be terrifying. And later on in the film, it happens. Now, when it comes to the pacing of the movie, I think that in general, it's good pacing. I was a bit worried because I have read some reviews and opinions saying that the pacing was at times too slow. There is only one part, the dance choreography that I mentioned, where the female character is flirting with James. And even one of my friends said they should have cut that scene in half, that choreography in half. And I totally agree. But everything else, it has this slow build up to this terrifying reveal near the end. So, in general, the pacing is good despite that particular scene. Now, let's talk about the plotline. And I think the story could serve as inspiration. If you play tabletop role playing games, horror role playing games, it could serve as inspiration for any sort of mystery, scenario, etc. So, you have this main character, James. He's a teacher, your average school teacher, but he has some dark secrets. Well, for starters, his mother has just committed suicide, and it's very strange. It's like it happened out of nowhere. And he inherits the old family house. But at the same time, his mother, like her last wish, she left her will. She indicated that he should not go into the house. He should not go back to the house because he actually left the house when he was very young, when he was very little. He experienced some traumatic events in that house. So he has like these memory blanks, this amnesia. He doesn't remember many things that happened in that house. And he had these nightmares featuring the Owlman. He even made some childish drawings of this creature. It's basically like a guy dressed somewhat elegantly, but in a decadent way. And this creature has claws and this huge owl head. Now, those of you that are familiar with the occult can probably already guess the identity of this creature. And it's pretty much that entity. So, despite all of that, James wants to know the truth about what happened to him when he was very young. It's like something that has been chasing him throughout his entire life. And he also wants to know about his mother's suicide. He talks about these things with his friend. His friend, as his father is dying. James' father seems to have died long ago, but his friend has his father in the hospital and he's very worried about him. So he talks things over with his friend and he decides to go to this house. You really feel like you are going into those creepy environments as he's moving through the forest and some murky looking lakes. It's more like a swamp sort of area. and he finally arrives to the house. Uh, he meets this caretaker of the house by the name of Eve, the female protagonist. So at first things start quite slow, just like presenting, getting to know each other, but there are hints of romance later on. So the entire film has James sort of recording or chronicling his what he is experiencing in the house. He has like this little recorder, and he's constantly speaking into it, this voice recorder. Mm. But then he starts to get glimpses of the Owlman. He either has some horrifying nightmares, or he kind of like looks at the creature from the corner of his eye, or sometimes the creature is just standing there in the middle of the road or in certain areas. It seems like the creature is getting closer and closer to the house. I think that in general the Owlman is a subtle dread sort of character. He doesn't look completely horrifying or terrifying. He just looks very alien. In that sense, it is Lovecraftian. Although Lovecraft would have added even weirder things, of course, but in general, it's a Lovecraftian entity. At least in the way that it is handled. You do get more information when it comes to the identity of this creature as James starts to investigate, to move around the house, reading books, exploring different rooms. You get more information when it comes to the mythology of the creature. But like I said, it's more like a dreadful presence. There is a particular scene where the creature looks terrifying because of the proximity and the lighting. I think that's a really good scene. I'm going to avoid spoilers. I'm not going to tell you exactly how it happens, but in that case, yes, the creature is terrifying, but for the most part, it's just like an alien, perhaps even fascinating creature, especially when it attempts to communicate with James. You also know that there has to be more to this story, because why did they introduce the friend at the start? And this woman, Eve, she has been living as a caretaker of the house. Why isn't she, has she experienced anything within the house? So all of those questions will come to mind as you are watching this film. And this is where it differs completely from a Lovecraftian story, in my opinion, because Lovecraft rarely featured romance in his stories. When there is a small element of romance, it's almost pushed to the side. You have almost no details. It's like it serves as an excuse to present some alien or weird horror. In most cases, I feel like the story leans more towards a style, more in the style of M.R. James or Algernon Blackwood, because of the wilderness. I think the wilderness serves as a sort of unexpected or not so obvious prison. It feels like the wilderness is a bit encroaching at times. Like you have this house in the middle of nowhere, a pretty big house. It could pretty much, you could turn it into a hotel or a bed and breakfast, a really big bed and breakfast if you wanted to. In fact, my friends were watching the movie and they were like, oh, I can't believe that guy went into that house. His mother told him not to go, and why didn't he just sell the property or turn it into some sort of hotel or whatever? But like I said, you have this contrast of this house in the middle of nowhere and the wilderness, the swamps, the forest, the trees. It feels like nature is kind of like keeping you or pushing you into the house in some way. As James explores the dark past of his house, which is pretty much his own dark past, there are going to be disturbing revelations, but in my opinion, they are predictable. I pretty much guessed the entire plotline almost from the very start, but what it is more difficult, the things that are a bit more difficult to grasp, is the glue or the mortar that ties all of those clues together. You will be asking yourself, oh, I get this, but why did it happen? Or it's pretty clear that this happened, but when and how and to what extent? And so by the end of the movie, in the climax, there will be some pretty terrifying moments. I found them terrifying, but because I am used to some horrifying situations, I just managed to appreciate them. But one of my friends, she was like, "Oh my god, that's so horrifying! That's like a nightmare. That's terrifying. That's she almost yeah, she kind of like, she didn't scream, but she was like like a bit like yelping or making strange noises because of the scene. It's a horrifying scene, and the source of the horror, let's say, it's very unexpected. So overall, I recommend that you watch Lord of the Tears or The Owlman. Remember, the link is in the description of this video. Don't watch it because you're expecting something groundbreaking or never seen before. There are some interesting filming techniques within the movie, and some plays with the camera, with the filters. I'm going to avoid spoilers, as I mentioned, but like I said, sometimes they change the filters or the filming style, and that really adds to the atmosphere. It combines with the emotions that James is going through. But yes, like I said, don't expect something too groundbreaking, especially when it comes to the plotline. You're watching it because you want to be entertained, and I think you will be entertained. But if you're expecting like this plot twist that you never saw coming, I think it's predictable. But like I said, it's like the small pieces between those larger pieces that will present some subtle surprises, like so that was it. Oh, so now it all makes sense. So definitely watch The Lord of the Tears, Owlman. Well, thanks for watching this review. If you have any comments or questions, please let me know. And thank you so much to those of you that have been supporting the channel by sending Drive-Thru RPG gift certificates. If anyone else wants to further support the channel, the information on how to do that will be in the description below. Once again, thank you and see you later.